Hello everybody, it's Aaron back from Screenstars, and I'm here once again to do another review for Geek Legion of Doom. Today I'm here to review the 2021 horror thriller The House on the Hill, also known as BARUN and the House on the Hill. Now this film is set in the 70s and it focuses on a young Indian couple who move into a house on the coast of the UK, and this house appears to be haunted. There is another character called BARUN who works as a sort of like a supernatural private investigator, I suppose, who is working with the police in the local area in order to try and help sort out this haunted house that is beginning to escalate and put lives at risk. Right. What are my thoughts on House on the Cliff? Now this, in some ways, is a bit of an unusual film. It's a low-budget film, and it's a combination of like English and Indian talent. So we've got a number of people involved here who are like Indian and English, and it makes for an interesting blend for the film. We've got different actors on display. Now, that at times is a positive and a negative. Because while I do think this film is fairly ambitious and does have some good points to it, there's a lot wrong with this film as well that just take the edge off the experience and in fact make it really quite challenging. Number one, the film's a little bit too long. It's like about an hour and 45 minutes. It just feels overlong to me, and I think the over-egg some of the scenes and things like that. I'm not sure as well how this film came to be, and what I mean by that is it's really poorly edited, and I'm not sure if this was maybe a series that they've turned into a film or something like that. It feels like there's lots of scenes sewn together and many of them don't relate to each other. It's very odd indeed. It'll jump from a dramatic scene and then it'll jump to like a scene with someone in like a psychiatric office or whatever. It's just very, very jarring, and it makes the film very difficult to follow, and it really does harm your enjoyment of the film. And also, there's a real problem with the sound in this film. I'm not sure if it's the dubbing or it's the way the voices have been recorded. It sounds like the cast have recorded their voice tracks into like an iPhone or something. It just sounds really odd. For example, the scenes in big buildings where people are talking, churches or whatever, and it sounds like they've recorded the voiceover in a cupboard or something like that. It really, again, it just takes you out of the film, and this film constantly keeps reminding you of its low budget for the reasons that I've described, and also some questionable performances that I think do drag down. I don't think everybody is questionable in their performances in this film. In fact, I think some of the performers are actually quite good, but they're not really given an awful lot to do here. What this film essentially is a haunted house film. But they play around with this film with some interesting visuals, granted, and I do think the effects that we do see here are of a decent standard for a film of this budget. Some of the effects for the ghosts and all this kind of stuff are actually pretty good. Not particularly scary, but I do think they're of a decent standard for a low-budget film, and I didn't really have a problem with that at all. I just thought that the editing was so jarring here, and it really affected your enjoyment in a sense of you couldn't settle and enjoy any aspect of this film. There's other things that I think that you have a problem with this film, in a sense of there's people dying left, right and centre. This house, likes to push people off cliffs, if you like. The spirits associated with this house. And it seems like people are aware of what this house is doing, but nobody really seems to be doing anything about it. And you do question, it gets to a point in the film, why are these characters or stroke character staying in this house after it's clearly dangerous and it's clearly not a place anybody would want to stay. I'd rather go and stay in the toilets down at a local supermarket than stay in this house at one point in this film, but they still continue to stay. And it also oddly plays around with this character BARUN, is like this paranormal investigator, and he dresses like Constantine, you know, with like the trench coat, like Castiel in Supernatural, who was based on the Constantine character in many ways. But again, he's given nothing interesting to do, and he doesn't seem that effective in his role either. And the film ultimately comes down to it's very predictable in how it comes down to, you know what I mean? The escalation continually goes on throughout the film, and then it ends up with, you know, this paranormal guy and like the local priests getting involved, and you get your confrontation at the end that is fairly lackluster, if I'm being particularly honest. So this is an odd one to kind of recommend. It is full of interesting ideas, and I do think it's fairly ambitious. And some of the locations are very effective, like the church shots and even the cottage that they're filming in. It all looks very thematic and appropriate for the film that we're watching. But there's so many things wrong with it. It just keeps pulling you out of the film, and I do think there was potential here because it's got a nice blend of actors and all this kind of stuff, and it's got some interesting themes going on in it, but I think ultimately it fails and it makes the film far less enjoyable because of it. So I can only really give this one a 4 out of 10. It's a bit of a letdown, but it has some interesting aspects of it too. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to call back on the channel for plenty more reviews and content very, very soon.